All right, let's jump right in. We're talking about a future that, well, it might be just around the corner. A future where artificial intelligence doesn't just help us work, it makes our work obsolete. And if that happens, it could completely shatter the social contract that's held everything together for centuries.
Yeah, that quote really hits you, doesn't it? It frames the whole thing perfectly. The stakes are, well, they're as high as they get. This isn't about the next cool app on your phone. We're talking about a total, fundamental rewrite of human history itself. Okay, so let's bring this down from the clouds. How does this huge, abstract idea actually touch your life? Well, it starts with something we all get: your job.
And look, this isn't some far-off sci-fi scenario we're dreaming up for our grandkids. We're hearing from the heads of the biggest AI labs on the planet that AGI, that's artificial general intelligence, could be here in just a few years. So the real question is, what actually happens when it clocks in for work?
You know, it's so important to get why AI is a totally different beast. Think about it. When we got laptops, sure, they made us way more productive, but you still needed a person typing on the keyboard, right? AI, it's not just a tool to help you do your job better. It can be the employee. It can do the job, often for a tiny fraction of the cost. And in a cutthroat market, that's everything. If your competitor automates and you're still doing things the old way, you're toast. So adopting this stuff, it's not going to be a choice. It's going to be about survival.
So the source material lays out this really plausible, kind of scary scenario for how this all goes down. They call it pyramid replacement. It doesn't start with some big, dramatic announcement of mass layoffs. No, it's quieter. It begins at the bottom of the corporate ladder. Companies just stop hiring for entry-level jobs. They fill those gaps with AI. Then, as the AI gets smarter, it starts to climb. The junior roles, automated. The middle managers, suddenly they're not managing teams of people anymore. They're overseeing a bunch of AI systems. And you follow that logic all the way to the top, and you could end up with a company run by just a few executives and a massive invisible workforce of AI. And if you're thinking, okay, that's still pretty far out, well, think again. I mean, by early 2025, we saw AI solving almost half of real-world coding challenges, 49%. The pace here is just staggering. And that leads to this really chilling thought, right? Right now, as you're listening to this is the worst this AI will ever be. It only gets better from here.
Okay, so this is bigger than just losing your job or my job. The ripple effects could be massive. We're talking about something that could grind society itself to a halt. I mean, what happens to human ambition, to that drive to get ahead, when all the doors to success start slamming shut? Right. This is the core economic bomb that's about to go off. For all of history, it's been pretty simple. Capital needed labor. Money needed people. If you had a great idea, your biggest headache wasn't finding the cash, it was finding the brilliant, talented people to actually build the thing. AI just flips the entire script. Now capital, just cold, hard cash to buy compute power in a data center, can do what talented humans used to do. It becomes a stand-in for brains. And the fallout from that? All those classic pathways for ambitious people to make their mark on the world, they could start to narrow or even close completely. Think about it. If you're an investor, why risk it all on one human founder when you can spin up 100 AI companies for the same price? If you're looking for a scientific breakthrough, why wait years for a human genius when an AI can simulate 1,000,000 experiments before breakfast? This goes for everything: politics, the military, you name it. The real danger here is that the very thing that has driven progress, that spark of outlier human genius, just can't keep up. It gets outcompeted. You know, a lot of people have this utopian dream about AI, right? A post-scarcity world where we all just relax because money doesn't matter anymore. But the source material argues that by default, we're heading in the exact opposite direction. That as human skill becomes less and less valuable, the power of having money today becomes, well, almost absolute. It could lock in the current power structures permanently. The whole idea of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, that could become a fairy tale. And this all leads us to the central metaphor of this whole argument, a really powerful idea that pulls it all together. They call it the intelligence curse. So to get what that means, we first have to talk about a weird thing in economics known as the resource curse. It's this bizarre paradox, right? You'd think a country that discovers a ton of oil or diamonds would get super rich and successful. But often, the exact opposite happens. They end up with less growth, more corruption, and worse outcomes for their people. But why? Okay, here's where the two ideas connect. With a resource curse, a government doesn't need its people to be productive and pay taxes. Why would it? It's getting all the money it needs straight from the ground, from oil wells. So the government has zero incentive to invest in its citizens, in their schools, and their healthcare. Now apply that exact same logic to AI. If a huge company, or even a whole country, can generate massive wealth from AI systems, why would they need to hire people? Why would they need to invest in a healthy, educated workforce? The incentive just disappears. And look, this is not just some academic theory. The source gives a perfect real-world example. You take two countries, both swimming in oil money, Oman and Equatorial Guinea. But their stories are night and day. Oman's leadership made a choice. They invested that oil wealth back into their people, and things like infant mortality plummeted. It was a huge success. Equatorial Guinea, the complete opposite. A tiny elite siphoned off all the money, while the population saw almost no benefit. That right there, that's the resource curse playing out in real life. It all comes down to this one brutal question. Why ask your people for money when you can get it from the ground? That's the core of it. The moment that wealth and power are no longer tied to the well-being of the population, the whole social contract just falls apart. And here's the truly terrifying part. AGI, it's like oil, but it's infinite and way, way more powerful. Okay, I know that is an incredibly dark picture. It's easy to feel a little hopeless hearing all that. But, and this is a huge but, the story doesn't have to end that way. This is the key takeaway. This is the default path. It's not destiny. It's what happens if we do nothing. We're standing at a massive fork in the road, and it's all about the choices we make starting right now.
This is so important. Technology is not destiny. The future isn't some wave that's just going to crash over us. We get to decide what we build. We get to set the rules. We can actually design the economic incentives of the future. We are not just passengers along for the ride. And this idea of being strategic about what we invent, it actually has a name. It's called differential technological development. It sounds complex, but it's a really simple idea. We can make a conscious choice about which technologies to push forward. We can pour our energy into building AI that helps people, that makes them smarter and more capable, that augments them, instead of just building AI that makes them obsolete. We can actually steer this ship. All right, so if we can steer the ship, how do we do it? How do we actively break this curse before it takes hold? Well, the source material lays out a clear, high-level game plan.
It's a three-part strategy, super simple. Avert, diffuse, and democratize. And this isn't just about the tech itself. It's a whole package deal. It's about safety, it's about who has the power, and it's about how we govern this new world.
So let's break that down. First, avert. That means we have to prevent some catastrophic AI event from happening, because a disaster would be the perfect excuse for a few powerful players to lock everything down. Second, diffuse. This means we need to spread the power of AI around. Think less like a giant centralized supercomputer controlled by one company, and more like the personal computer, a tool that empowers everybody. And third, democratize. This just means our governments and institutions have to adapt. They have to stay connected to what real people actually need, not just what the AI systems need. When you put it all together, what's the goal? It's a world where that spark of human ambition isn't snuffed out. A world where AI is our tool, where it serves us, not the other way around. A future where we can still push progress forward, and where human beings, us, remain the masters of our own destiny. So we end right back where we started with that powerful quote. The future of our entire civilization isn't set in stone. The source material is crystal clear on this. The choices we all make right now, what tech we support, what rules we demand, what companies we build, that is what will define the next chapter for humanity. History is being written as we speak, so the only question left is, what part will you play?